Am I the asshole for not letting a woman have the seat next to me on the plane? I recently had to fly across country in the US to deal with a certain company matter. My company apologized profusely to me because I am terrified of flying, but seeing as it would have been a 24-hour drive, I obliged. Okay, weird way of framing it in the beginning. For the trip, my company paid for my seat, but I decided to also reserve the seat next to mine. Again, this is an anxiety issue. I would have fit just fine into my seat, but if I needed to vomit or I started getting panicky, at the very least, I wanted to have a buffer between myself and the next person. I had an aisle seat in a 3-person row, and people were shuffling around changing their seats before takeoff. I don't know how this works, but apparently people occasionally just sit down wherever they want, and the flight attendants don't have to deal with it. The seating arrangement was me, open seat, the one I had purchased, and then a teenaged girl who was maybe in the 7th grade. Right before we started taxiing, a middle-aged woman abruptly sat down in the middle seat and fist bumped the teenage girl. Immediately, I told her that I had reserved that seat, and she started by being very considerate. She quietly told me she was getting away from a bad situation and really wanted to sit next to her daughter. During this explanation, she repeatedly pointed out her daughter sitting next to her as if I would be a monster for depriving her of that seat. I stuck to my guns, though, and told her that I would get the cabin attendant if she didn't go back to her seat, several rows back in the middle. She called me on my bluff, so I had to flag down a flight attendant. He asked if I really needed the middle seat, and I said yes. He then politely asked the woman to move, which she did, but not before calling me a dickhead. Since she did this rather loudly, several people were clearly looking at me, and I couldn't really read what they were thinking. I kind of feel bad about it now, and after arriving safely, I wonder if I should have given up the seat. What do you think, Cristine?
Ooh.
I feel like a lot of people have very strong opinions about airplane seating etiquette here.
Yeah, I waver back and forth because I kind of see all sides. And then you say something else that gives me more insight into, okay, well.
I mean, ultimately, the rational position is if that woman wanted to sit with her daughter, then you should have booked 2 seats together. And I know it's really shitty now that most airlines basically make you pay for picking seats like that. I feel like that hasn't always, and they overbook and all sorts of air travel sucks in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I get it, right? But I totally empathize with this guy just being like, he's entitled to buy an empty seat. This is a thing people do. We looked into this once because a lot of the flights we were doing within Canada aren't they're not planes big enough to have a business class or anything. So everyone's sitting in coach. But you can basically, some airlines have like premium economy, which basically just means you get a row of 3 to yourself and they just block off the middle seat.
Right. Yeah.
So for you and I, we don't need like fucking pods to lie down in for flights. We just like the idea of having our own row and no one between us.
For anxiety kind of reasons.
Also that
honestly,
too, right?
Yeah.
It's nice. Flying's a business expense for us usually too. So like a lot of airlines just offer that premium economy. So we would just do that, which is essentially just 3 seats in a row with the middle one blocked off. So to me, I don't see any issue with someone just sort of doing that back in the coach or cabin section if they want to block off a seat.
The rational part of me also agrees with that because he purchased a seat. It should be his. However, people do this all the time in airlines and get kicked out and moved around because of things beyond their control because airlines are dickheads sometimes. I do think I would never put myself in the position of trying to impose myself on something that someone else had purchased or did. So I can't see myself ever being in the position of the woman who came over. Like I would just never do that. Even if I wanted to sit beside my daughter so badly, I wouldn't do that. However, the poster did say something about how she was trying to get out of a bad situation. What does that mean? I don't know. Was there a danger of her sitting somewhere else in the plane where she was previously? Maybe. And if that's actually the case, then I would give up, the seat I purchased for that reason.
I don't know what that could possibly mean in this scenario. And it's maybe I have a cynical view of people, but like I think people are willing to just say things to make people uncomfortable to try to get their way, right? Like maybe this woman does this all the time.
They did fist pump. So I don't know what
how
that
dangerous can the situation be? But you know what I mean? Some people are very used to asking for favors, and most people like their inclination is to just want to be nice and accommodating.
And say yes.
Like if someone came up to me and was like, "Oh, can I have that seat in the middle?" I would immediately feel anxiety, even if I really didn't want them there. It takes something to say no to that, right? Because you want to avoid, mostly want to avoid conflict.
Yeah, I hate airplanes, but I know I'm very anxious on airplanes, and I hate the idea of sitting like smacked up beside a stranger. It just gives me terrible anxiety. Smacked up beside Ben, I can do that.
Well, we once got remember when we
got separated? Yeah,
like there was a canceled flight or something, and we got like the last two seats on a different flight, but they were separated, and you had a lot of anxiety about
awful, especially when other people try and talk to you.
The worst.
I'm just like, I'm a silent traveler. I can't talk to anyone else unless it's like Ben. I don't want to make small talk conversation.
What is it? Something about flying though?
You know, I wouldn't really say that I have a fear of heights or a fear of flying, but being in such a small space with so many people, like sweating, you can smell it, you can hear it, like them chewing. All of that, I think, makes me anxious. It's not just the flying, like on its own. So that's why we usually try and book seats where it's just Ben and I in a row, because then I don't have the added anxiety of someone like literally right beside me. Yeah. But growing up my whole life, I flew, to visit my grandmother in Florida. My family would go down once a year, and we would sit with random strangers. And that was, so I've done that many times. I don't want to sound like I'm so like, I can't sit with other people. But now that I have the choice and the luxury of, paying for more seats, basically, I would rather not sit with other people.
When was the last time we were on a plane even?
Yeah, I know. It's been a while.
It feels so foreign.
Which I don't mind. I don't mind not having to fly anywhere.
Oh, I don't want to drive for 25 hours.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to do that either.